Hello everyone, welcome to a new video. So, today I'm reading one of my most favorite books. I've probably read this over 100 times already. But it's one of my favorites. But before we get started, how is everyone doing? Hopefully good. So, today's story is Connor Kenway, ex-reader, No Man's Property. Whew. Everyone ready? Okay. Let's get started. Let's get started. You couldn't say selling your body was much of a life to live, but it was one you lived to the best of your ability, nonetheless. People looked down on you, sure, but you had money to get by in this wretched world, and what else could be said about that? It wasn't the wisest decision you made that day, taking the streets late at night, but most men looking for sexual pleasures usually roamed about the late hours, drunk or sober. The brothel girls had taught you everything you needed to know, and what to look for in trying to weasel money from a man. Most drunks were easy to coax into a notion more than sober, but some could be angry when foggy-headed with whiskey. So you had to make sure you choose who to approach wisely. Bottom line, picking the wrong man could end your life. As you stood your ground in the cold chaos of night, you watched the very few men that wandered the streets. One in particular caught your eye, but not in the right way. He was a Native American, from what you could make out in the dimly lit streets, and that alone made you pull from the idea of even approaching him, even if he cast you a look of interest. You were told such awful stories about the natives in the land that all you could think were that they were savages. He was still staring, and that alone made you try to act disinterested, as you didn't desire his company at all. Despite he probably wouldn't even pay you. Keep walking, a barbarian, you thought to yourself. Regardless of your thoughts, the nameless man, aboard in rather intricate clothing, began to approach you. Swallowing harshly, you backed up out of instinct. You had never had to see these people up close, such as this, and why this one was so far into town was beyond your understanding, as they usually were kept outside this town limits, unless owned by some man as a slave. The weapons upon him could easily tell you he was a free man, to do as he pleased. The wall behind you made you realize you couldn't go much further than that, as you were stuck with this man soon looming over you. In the end, you had to be polite. Once again, you couldn't anger the wrong man, no matter what you personally felt about his kind. "Can I help you, sir?" you asked, trying to sound meek and unimportant to someone such as him. "You are the only woman I've seen out this late," the man said rather matter-of-factly, as he kept his gaze upon you. It was true, most women and children were indoors at late hours, tending to their own business, while the men could do as they pleased. However, you had no man to tell you what to do, at least not yet. You smirked at his words of interest and shrugged your shoulders as if the idea was nothing to you. I only go inside when a man pays me, you explain, to try and hint at your profession. Maybe he would be interested. You weren't sure. Why must the thing happen? He inquired. His eyes expressed absolute loss in your sentence. It is cold out here, and you could catch death from it dressed in clothes like that. Opening your mouth to counter, you stopped yourself and merely shook your head. He wasn't a normal man. You had to remember this. Maybe if you just came right out and said it, he might understand it better and move along. I'm a prostitute, dear. Still, the man gazed at you, bewildered by such a title. It was obvious. It was oblivious. It was obviously one he had not heard before. Anyways, you sighed, ignoring the idea of explaining yourself further to him. I am sure you have things to do and better places to be. You waved at him eagerly. You should probably be on your way. But you look cold out here, the tribal man continued, as if not wishing to drop the topic. He was probably taking notice of how you were embracing yourself. There is chill of the night, but you had grown used to such conditions. Can I not at least help you home? Admittedly, you wanted to tell him none of this was his concern, and to be off. But you were conflicted with his honest words and kind behavior for someone you deemed barbaric at a moment ago. Nobody took notice of you. Everyone just saw you as a thing more so than a person. You might actually have needs. And in that small exchange, this man was willing to offer you warmth by escorting you back to safety. Again, you smirked and looked down at your feet before having the time to looking back in his eyes. What is your name, sir? The man struggled for a moment. Did he not know his own name, or was he worried you wouldn't be able to pronounce it? Connor, he said simply, not giving a last name of any sort in the process. Connor looked to you and nodded in your direction curiously. And yours? Your name, you answered in return before smiling at him reassuringly. Thank you for your kindness, Connor, but I promise that I will be fine out here. I've done this before, many times in fact. You've never gotten sick? Connor probed curiously, finding that odd. Perhaps he saw you as some frail woman who couldn't handle herself, as he could. You weren't sure. He had already shown more humanity than any other men out there so far, so perhaps it would be wrong to think such ill thoughts. No, you answered, with a shake of your head. If I get sick, I am sure it will be by some other method. Again, you're being vague, but you knew sleeping with one man and then another wouldn't go well in the long run. The confusion was written on his face once more, but it seemed that was enough to have this wild man nod his head in understanding. Be well then, your name, said Connor, as he wasn't sure what else to say. Wasn't sure what else to say to you in instinct. You head out the cold, perhaps. You wanted to just let him be gone, but you sighed with your breath, apparent on the chilly air. Connor? You call out to him to stop Connor in his tracks and have him look at you. A smile crept onto your lips, no matter how brief it was, and you responded, "Thank you for your concern." He did a slight bow of his head to the words you spared him before continuing on his way for the evening. After he had left the area, your mind ventured back to your exchange with him. You tried to shake the pleasant thoughts of that man away, but it would prove to be a challenge. It seemed as kindness was just so hard to come by these days. Sickness never found you, as that Connor fellow worried it would. You were relieved. The last thing you wanted was to be sick in bed for a few days when you should be out trying to get money you needed. The roof over your head wasn't a great one, no, but it was a roof all the same. And it took money to keep it all together. Last night you were able to make a bit of coin, but only enough to pay for a single meal, as you still had to pay your way in the brothel as well. I don't need that woman yelling at me, you grumbled to yourself in regards to the woman who owned and ran the brothel, grabbing up your nice set of clothes, as you figured working the morning hours wouldn't be a bad plan right about then. Working nights was a lot more adventurous, sure, but it was also sporadic in who you stumbled upon. You did your best to entrance men of all kinds to your chambers at the brothel. At this point, you had to work hard and do whatever it took to make sure things went well. Easily, as you fell into the same sweet talk, you fell into the sweet talking that any man dared flatter you with. Yes, they were just saying that as they could have you spread your legs to them, but regardless of what prompted them to say such things, they were welcome to you at all the same. By nightfall, you were still short, and you swore to yourself for how difficult business has been of lately. It used to be much easier than this. So what happened? You dared not blame yourself in the end. You hadn't changed in personality or even appearance. Maybe it was the talk of war that always fell on the town's ears. There were always so many as you can make on the subject as you took back into the cold embrace of night. You went back to your usual spot, not far from one of the local pubs, to keep watch on partons coming in and out through the doors. However, judged by the uniforms of importance most men wore coming and going, you could tell they weren't boozers. So the night may end up long yet. One of the men walking in caught your eye, however. It was that Connor again. You never pictured his kind to be one to enjoy in a drink, but honestly, you knew so little of the man already. You never knew how or why he was able to walk about town. He was without anybody raising hell over it. As the time went onwards, you could find yourself getting colder and exhausted. Would there really be another day where you have to find yourself without food? As you already wasted the last bit of coin you had on a meal. You needed more money to allow the brothel to believe you are worthy of being kept. You're back against the brick building as you embraced yourself with sorrowful sigh, knowing your earnings would have to grant you a salvation over starvation. Just as you were lost within your own thoughts, you heard someone approaching you, but you didn't think to look up right away until a sight of a incoherently woven quilt was seen dangling in view. Its pattern caught you by surprise. It was of quality you have never seen before, and the tassels upon it made you feel otherworldly to you. Eyes trailing from the ends of the one responsible for holding it, you saw Connor once more, and a brief smile flickered upon your face to show his presence was welcomed. Here, he said, handing it over to you. You say you are fine out here, but your eyes telling me another story. As you looked to the handmade quilt offered to you, but you didn't want to be a bother to this native man. I am fine, Connor, you insisted once more. I promise I'll be... But he didn't listen to you. And when you kept refusing the offer, he moved the welcomed warmth around you all the same. It smelled of the wild to you, not in an unpleasant way, but in a relaxing sense, as the woodlands always reminded you of freedom. As the designs were the most intricate as you could the designs were the most intricate as you could ever witness on a quilt today. What? I cannot speak today. The design were the most intricate you could ever witness on a quilt today, is when you had a chance to look at it a bit more close up. While a bit heavier than you'd expect a quilt to be, it still had a strange warmth to it compared to the other handmade blankets as well. As though the fabrics were so strong and resilient, nothing could penetrate them. You found yourself wrapped in this gift without another word from Connor. As his serious look stayed upon his sculpted face, he seemed all business so far. As you had yet to see him smile, or even heard him crack a joke. Yet, once again, his actions were comforting, all on their own. Thank you, Connor, you whispered in the dead of night, not expecting this man to be so gentle given the stories you allowed to prevent him and his people. You said if a man pays you, you'll go inside, Connor pointed out curiously. Should I pay you to come out of the cold? As you stifled a laugh at his naive behavior towards what you really were. He was like a child experiencing the world for the first time. And for whatever reason, that made your heart feel lighter. The only place I should go is back to the brothel, you reminded him, wishing as you could go to the pub at least. You reminded him, wishing you could go to the pub at least, as you do anything for something to drink or eat. Connor looked from where you stood back at the pub he had just come from, and then back to you. He wasn't one to talk much, you noticed. Digging into his uniform, he handed you a few coins. What a curious look to his eyes. Is this what you need? He asked. Looking at the money he offered you, you didn't question how he got it, as you knew the natives relied more on trading than actual money. As you ran your fingers over the glistening currency, as you continued, you counted how much it was in total with what you had put away in your satchel. And you felt relief wash over you, as it would be indeed enough to get you through another day. Yes, you answered, putting them away with the others with a bright smile. It will be enough today. It will be enough. But he didn't know what it was you did for a living. At least his actions and words suggested so anyways. Come with me, Connor insisted, stepping away from the building you're reciting on before and heading back to the pub he had just come from. You didn't argue. He had paid you. So whatever he wanted to happen would happen, no matter how nervous you were of being around this man. Frequently, oh my goodness, as you had been in and out of pubs from time to time, you weren't allowed in unless accompanied by a patron who could pay your way. However, as you were scolded not long ago for disturbing the customers with your attempts to get what the business needed, but Connor had paid you, and if the pub was where he wanted to be, so be it. He had bought you a meal, and you felt gracious for him and his company. You are a strange man, Connor, you felt compelled to say as you savored the food on your plate. Not many I know of would take interest in me and worry for my well-being. I know your people and mine are different, said Connor honestly from where he sat across from you. We see freedom as a welcomed word. Okay, give me 1 second, I am so sorry. We see freedom as a welcomed word, where's yours, chain it down, and only give it to those who deem worthy. There was no lie there, so you lacked a response. You just stared down at your drink, as if ashamed to admit that was truthful. Connor leaned against the table with his fingers intertwined with one another upon the wooden table. Why must men be the one to tell you what you can and cannot do? I told you I was a prostitute. But it is obvious you do not know what that means, you said in defense. Honestly, how were you going to explain this without making yourself seem weaker than he already perceived you? I sell my services to men, and whatever they want done, I'll do it. To say such things would say you are a warrior, corrected Connor, finding her statement false in its vulgariness? ? But judging from the look of you, you've never carried a weapon in your life. I sell my body for favors, you finally said, lowering your head as you felt ashamed in it. Connor reclined back in his chair at the sound of that. Was he disgusted by what you said? You couldn't tell. He kept the same stoic face from what you saw when you found the courage to gaze upon him. You think lowly of yourself. That made you angry for some reason, regardless of how much truth rang in it. Your fingers coiled in anger at that statement, and you bit your lower lip to prevent venomous words from spilling forth. The praise and the money is delightful, Connor, you said, trying to still your anger in your shaking tone. However, that's not only why I do it. You are forced to, he asked curiously, to know why you choose this profession. I do it of my own free will. Connor's small laugh sounded bitter at best. So you choose to lock yourself in chains? It's not that simple, you hissed lowly, at this ignorant man, realizing you were letting your anger flare. You let it settle for a second before continuing. Once the brothel has you, there is no escaping it. You have a debt that needs to be paid, or they will end your life for wasting their time. And what was that you said about doing it of your own free will? Connor asked, his hands clutching in a fist upon the table. As you sucked in your lower lip, none of your past was his concern. None of it. Never would you allow anybody to know that your own father sold you to the brothel to pay off his debts. He owned you. He owed, and that at a young age you feared to mention. You had lost your virginity to some scumbag who would have you. Stop asking these questions, please. Your voice was quiet, but there was enough anger and strength in your tone for Connor to relent. There is pain in your words, the observant man pointed out. I am sorry for causing them. Again, he would be the first to apologize for hurting you. Not even your own father did that. Sighing, you felt your body grow heavy with sorrow. I appreciate that, Connor. Your voice was a mere whisper, but you lacked the strength to be more vocal than that. Quietness engulfed the air between you, but you weren't sure what else to say now. Yes, he didn't mean to hurt you, but his questions and comments did all the same, and now you felt burdened by them. You will go back to this brothel then? Connor asked, to remove the deafening silence. You flinched slightly at his question. I have nowhere else to go, so yes. So this is why you were always there outside of the building, he continued. You are looking for money? That is what I inquired to stay breathing, yes, you answered weakly yet again, fondling with your tankard. Will what I give you help? You couldn't hold back your meager laugh as it erupted forth from your lips. Yes, Connor, you answered, looking to him now to let him see that you were being serious. It will help me greatly. Thank you. As you took a long drink of your liquor, as you thought back on him and his tribe, that was no doubt out in the woods about this world. What is it like where you live? Much different from your world, your name, Connor said simply at first, taking a drink himself. He remained silent for a moment as he thought of how to phrase it. For one, we don't have slaves. We live in an embrace of freedom. He looked you up and down for some reason before continuing. We also don't lie besides anyone but the one we choose to be our own. A cold smirk happened upon your face. So you think ill of me? Your world is different from mine, Connor reminded you with a shrug of his hand. Why should I pass judgment upon someone in this world I know nothing of? You were quiet as the air was knocked from you. At such an odd response. I'll always see slavery as wrong, as well as the mistreatment of my people. But there are other things in your world I cannot grasp yet, so I have no say. You are indeed a strange man. You lightheartedly finished off the rest of the meal. he had bestowed you. Not many men I know of would be so quickly to say it is not their place when they feel everything I say and do is their place. Connor didn't respond. He merely gazed upon you curiously. Apparently he couldn't speak for everyone. Finding your feet is you worked on removing the quilt from your back to hand back to the man who gifted it to you. I should give this back to you before I head back. I should give this back to you before I head back. He raised his hand to the offer. I gave it to you, Connor said honestly, finishing his own drink before taking to his feet as well. Did you need help getting back to this brothel of yours? No, you answered, keeping the blanket upon you a bit tighter, as you knew the night would be colder given the hour. It's an easy walk there, and I will be fine. You weren't sure if he'd approve or disapprove of the action, but you reached over to him to take his hand within yours, regardless of the pains of the past being uprooted, no thanks to him. A bit of peace came to mine as well. Thank you for everything, Connor. The native man didn't seem displeased in your actions. He didn't shake you away like some unworthy being that made you smile. Instead, you felt his hand flex to yours, and the rough feeling of his fingers touched the back of your hand in a tender manner. Moving towards the door, as you released his hand and continue, May I see you again soon? You felt bad having to let this nicely designed piece of art get dragged to the brothel. It was so enchanting in his looks that you didn't want any harm to come to it. But since Connor refused it back, you had little choice in the matter as you traveled back to your home. The next day was hardly different from the others. The only thing that was surprisingly different was the fact the owner of the brothel came to speak to you about a client. She had let herself in without so much as a knock, catching you a bit off guard in the process. Wake up, your name, she insisted, moving the curtains from your window to let the light pour in to aid in such a thing. You groaned, burying your face for a moment. A strong light in the early hours was very unwelcomed. However, that woman was relentless. And she began to clap her hands eagerly to get you to raise after lighting the small lantern in your room. Come on up, she barked again, grabbing at the quilt Connor had given you to tear at it from your body. There is a man here asking for you. Get up and get dressed. Don't make me ask again. She was a strict woman, sure, but what boss wasn't? Her name was Lily James. An average built of a woman with orange-red hair and blue-green eyes with freckles adorned her face. She had a sweet side, but also a side that could make you forget such a part of her existed if you were so much as crossed her. Pulling yourself from your peaceful sleep, as you tried to rid your body of exhaustion with a look to Lily curiously. Who is it? You asked, attempting to hide how tired you truly were. His name is Terrence Jefferson, she answered with a tone that suggested she was annoyed you'd bother asking such a minor detail. Terrence. You knew who he was. He was a man who felt he was justified in doing anything he pleased. It led him to be a character about town you cared very little for, as he would pay women for their time and do most horrible things to them. Women returning to the brothel shaken, battered, and bruised. Yet Lily cared little as long as she was willing to pay to keep the brothel standing. What does he want with me? You asked nervously, getting to your feet to walk over to where your clothing was neatly folded to work on doing yourself up for him, all the same. How would I know? Lily asked with a raise of her brow. I care not for the reasoning behind men and why they deserve one woman over another. All I know is that he has the money for it, so get dressed now, she ordered once more and took her leave of the room to let you be in peace. As you worked up on getting everything in place upon your body slowly, honestly, you were in no hurry to run to this man's embrace, no matter what it was he promised you. Once you were dressed, as you made your way to the main room of the brothel where patrons usually gathered, and saw him standing there, talking to Lily all the same. Ah, there she is, Terrence pointed out, gesturing to you as you walked on in. He made his way to you and took your hand to kiss it, to kiss the back of it like a gentleman would, but the feel of his breath and lips upon your skin made you feel a sickness rise up within your stomach. It is a pleasure to meet you. Your name. He knew your name, of course. He made it his business to know the goings-on about town. So you expected no less, even if you didn't desire his company or his money. You forced a smile upon your lips and nodded. It is a pleasure, Mr. Jefferson. What do I owe you the honor? The words were hard to even usher from your lips. As you worried where this would all take you when it was all over. I'd think, given your profession, my dear, that would be obvious. His words were almost degrading as well as the way he spoke them. It was as if he were laughing at the mere thought of this going anywhere beyond you ending up in his bed. Still, you did your best. Still, as you did your best to still your tongue as you nodded. How much are you offering? He leaned in to whisper to you, but also used his body to hide his actions as he grabbed your wrist so tightly that it made you nearly scream in pain. We'll discuss that later, shall we? Here he pointed towards the door leading out of the brothel. After you. As you waited for him to loosen his grip upon you, and once he had done so, as you left with him. Stomach in knots, you were nervous at what was to await you when you arrived at his housing. Terrence refused to use the brothel itself, given his cruel and strange ways about things. And now, it was your turn, out of the women, to suffer his exotic ways of things. Ushered into his home, you took no comfort there. All you could do was prepare yourself for whatever was to happen next. What do you want with me? You boldly asked. only to have this horrible human being come from behind you to grab your chin and force you to look up at him. The touch was so unwanted by you that you struggled to escape it at first, only to have Terrence shake you to make you straighten up. "Is that really your place to ask?" Terrence asked in a low hiss of a whisper, moving your lips to his in a forced kiss. His breath was horrid. It was stained with beer and the smell of smoke, making you nearly cough from the unpleasant taste. He obviously felt you trying to wiggle free, for it was there he shoved you down upon the wooden floor of his home, arms and side hitting the boards with a harsh manner. You cringed from the pain that rocked through you before looking at him, pleading to stop this madness. "Oh, you little girl," he sneered, walking upon you slowly like a predator that had its wounded prey in sight. "You are in my domain now, so I can do as I please." You tried to scurry away from him, but Trent was faster. Fear was your worst enemy in this, as you were frantic while he was calm. His knees on either side of you pinned you in place upon your front as you felt him grab your hair. A scream erupted from your throat in the process. "Stop! Let me go!" you begged, fingers curling in an unpleasant way to where you marked the boards underneath you, and even injured a nail or two. It was then you felt something cold to your throat. Eyes widening, you realized what it was. Terrence brought his lips to your cheek, as if to falsely soothe you into submission. It was the flat part of a blade that would easily end you with wrong false words spread, or one wrong move. Your lips trembled as you looked to this beastly man in horror. There, he cooed, moving the blade towards your other cheek to let you see it even better. "If you just do as I say, then this won't be as bad as all of that." As what you could say about it regardless, as you were at the mercy of this man. In the end, the day was long and endless. Terrence had his say in everything, and if you so much so as didn't do as he asked, he struck you. Needless to say, he struck you hard enough to leave an awful mark upon your right eye, and a cut above your upper lip. Your body was sore from all that he had done, and you felt worse sort of uselessness wash over you from all his insults and verbal beatings. When it was done, you were almost in shock when it was finally over, and he threw the money you needed on the floor at where you were laying, beaten and aching. The taste of blood upon your mouth was even staining your teeth. As you looked up at the horrible human being who dared call himself a man, chest heaving from the sobs, and that had overwhelmed you. But as you closed your eyes tightly, is almost when you felt his boot nudge your sore face. "Not bad, your name," he smirked. The candle in his possession illuminated his features all the more as night had settled in around you both. You took a lot more than I was expecting. That was impressive. You didn't want to be impressive. You wanted him to leave you alone or say what a failure you were and let this be the last of it. I'll be back tomorrow, he said, turning to leave you there on the floor. Now get out of my house. You didn't need to be told twice, but you were slow on getting there. Your legs hurt and were even bleeding from the scratch marks upon your thighs. However, with what energy you could muster, you grabbed the money and hurried with a limp out the door into the night. It was so hard to even run as you desired. You were in more pain than you realized, and it made you stop to rest against the building for a moment, to try and recollect yourself. Tears streaming from your bruised face. You got defensive when someone reached for you. As you turned around to push their hand away to only be grabbed by the one responsible. It was Connor who was looking at you, now in anger-fueled curiosity. What happened? He asked. His tone was hard and heavy. It's nothing, Connor. As you whispered, but you knew your pathetic lie wouldn't get you far from him. His hand to your face, as you felt him touch you there, just below the bruised eye, and that had taken a horrible hit from Terrence earlier in the day. Tell me you did this to yourself. Tell me you did this to yourself would be another lie I am not welcoming, Connor hissed as if to scold you for trying. Did some man do this? He was eager to know the answer, and while you appreciated him being there, you just couldn't handle this at the moment, and you started to cry heavily. It was, and I might have to endure this wrath tomorrow. To raise a hand to one so defensive is a crime on its own worthy of punishment. The tribal man growled, and it was there in the moonlight that you saw his face harden all the more. Who was he? What was this man's name? He was mocking the idea, as you were earlier, and that this person could very well be called such. No, don't do such a maddening thing, Connor, you begged, grabbing his face to make him look you in the eyes and swear he wouldn't. I don't want to be responsible for anything such as that. You would allow a man to raise his hands to you and then protect him? Connor was almost yelling as he was unsure of how to even take your behavior in this. Why would you convert these chains that binded you so? Because I was sold, Connor, you screamed, finally coming out with the truth of it all. The native man straightened up slightly at those words and looked at you in mute astonishment. Perhaps he found it odd that these people would sell their own kind. You weren't sure as you tried to explain it a bit better for him. I was sold to the brothel. I was sold by my own father, you whispered pathetically, face breaking under the weight of sorrow, just having to admit that a man who was supposed to be your love and support sold you to keep himself a home and other things. Connor still wasn't able to speak. Seemed you knocked the air from him with the weight of your confusion. This world doesn't work as you think it does, Connor, you said, embracing your abused body in the cold winter air. Things are just not as simple as you think they are. Pausing as you you were reminded of how much pain your lip was in when you attempted to bite it out of habit. I don't convert anything as you think I do. I am chained down because I am property. Saying a man owns you is like saying he owns the ground he walks on or the air he breathes. Connor resorted with an angered gesture at the idea. How can people view other humans as property? Your own people sell one another as slaves? Is there no end to this? He was disgusted, and rightfully so. It was a gross way to make money and to make a living, but there was little anybody could say about it. Not like you had a place to say much things. I need to get back to the brothel, you whispered pathetically, not sure what else to say at the matter. Why your name? He asked angrily, not completely sure where you could find the pleasure in this. Why go back to the very place where you are likely to endure this again? And where would I have to go, Connor? As you questioned, snapping a bit at his behavior. I told you, I cannot leave the brothel. Then run from it, the native man insisted, grabbing at your shoulder to try and sway you to the idea. I will guide you to freedom, if you will allow it. Again, you broke down crying, not out of sorrow, but from overwhelming joy at the idea. He would be so willing to do such a thing. And where would I go? You asked again, wanting to know the answer to that more than anything. I told you, I would have nowhere to go. Connor paused, thinking about what to do before he was able to respond. To my village. At first you thought he was lying, but you've never known this man to lie so far. This brothel will not find you there. Not find you there. Would I even fit in with your people? You asked curiously, as the Native American lived such differently than the Americans in the colonies. I will teach you to, said Connor without a second thought of the matter. I will teach you to be able to do things you couldn't before. His hands to yours, he held in a tight yet reassuring manner. In the eyes of the spirits, we are all the same. No man, woman, or child is above the other. Closing your eyes tightly as you lowered your head, as you inwardly wished you could believe such pleasant lies. Most your life as you had been raised to be underneath men, and that your voice mattered little to those around you. So what could possibly change out in Connor's village? All right, you whispered pathetically. Trying to dry your eyes, though the bruised one still stinging. Sting? If you so much so as moved to blink. I will come with you. Connor motioned onwards down the road where he saw you face Prior. I'll help you in leaving tonight. We should be quick about this. And so you led the way back to the brothel, and made sure to just venture quickly to your bedroom, where you opened the window for Connor to come in through. I don't have much, really, you said, trying to get yourself together after your experience with Terrence. But it was a challenge at best, as you had never been forced to have sex with a man before, and you never had one raise his hands to you you never had one raised his hands to you like that, or a blade. Your body still reminded you of his cruel ways, and more than anything, is you desired a bath to be rid of the foul touch and memories. Take what you need, Connor said, as who had pulled this breek hood up and over his head. For some reason was sneaking about the outside of the brothel. We can't be burdened by too much, or the ride there will be a long one. Honestly, is you didn't need much. All you cared to take now was the quote Connor had given you that night. You had money on your hip, but it was there that the tribal man removed it from you and put it on the nightstand where Lily would see it when entering the vacant room. What are you doing? I could use that. As you reminded him in a high whisper. Not in my village. If this brothel wants your coins, let them have it, he insisted, taking your hand and guiding you up and out of the window, regardless of how much of a challenge it would be to get you through it in the dress you wore. All in all, as you were both out of the town in due time, Connor had fetched a horse to aid in the quest back to his village, and before long, as you found yourself being stared at by his people at your entrance you found yourself being stared at by his people at the entrance their boundaries. It was unsettling to you for some reason. Perhaps it was the stories playing on your mind and worries, but all the same, you weren't sure what to make of it, as they were speaking in a language you knew nothing of. Is when you were ushered in through the gates. His words were much different, as you could easily see that from the movement you took and everything. As while you wouldn't outright say it, everything looked and felt primitive to you. Feeling the horse come to a stop, as you let Connor dismount first before having him aid you to your feet. With everyone staring at you now, as you leaned against the tribal man, all the more as he felt your salvation. Connor, are you sure I belong here? You asked nervously. In time, as you will feel that you belong, said Connor simply, as he took your hand and guided you onwards to what you could only assume was his home. It was made of animal hide and wood, and yet the smell was more pleasant than you assumed it would be when you ventured inside. As there were more rocks positioned in a neat circle around the wood to indicate that it was probably where the fire burned late at night, and the animal skins decorated the beds and even hung from the ceiling, embracing yourself in the blanket you had been gifted. As you look around the primitive decor and interest, as foreign as it was also welcoming. It is best we change your clothes. He instructed. It is best we change your clothes, he instructed, pulling out a pair of clothing that was made of animal hide and decorated in the most unique of ways with beads and other designs woven in the material. Is you won't like getting a gown like that dirty here. Izzy smiled all the same at Connor's words and shook your head with a cocky smirk. These clothes are my chains, Izzy reminded him honestly. I would be happy to be rid of them. Connor tensed at those words and looked to you curiously. Then afterwards, you should burn them. It is best to be done with that which binds you. Again, you chuckled at his words, as you accepted the new clothing with a nod. I'll be happy to do so with you once I am changed. As the hooded man merely nodded at the idea, but in that moment, as you witnessed a smile spread across his lips. The first smile at all that you have seen him spare you. My goodness, I cannot speak. For some reason, it's, oh my God. But in that moment, as you witnessed a smile spread across his lips, the first smile at all that you had seen him spare to you, for some reason the sight of it made you feel at peace with everything and your decision. Connor left the large structure to leave you to yourself and your reawakening, to say the least. The clothes were much different than what you were used to. They were heavier than what you wore, but a lot warmer, and dare you say more comfortable? Walking around in a corset and dress was the most uncomfortable thing any woman could be confined to. With the new clothes in place, as you ventured out to meet with Connor, who was apparently speaking to this elder woman in his native tongue. The woman stopped focusing on the man who had saved you and looked to you now with a motion to Connor to let you know you were there. As you weren't sure what was being said between them, but you could only hope is you didn't upset someone by just being there. Connor took his leave with the elder woman, a respectable gesture before heading towards you. Do they fit? He asked curiously. Much better than that awful dress, that's for sure, you answered, gazing at the elder not far from both. I am not in trouble for being here, am I? No, Connor answered as he motioned to the woman standing there patiently still. This is the clan mother to my tribe. I don't know how to pronounce that, so I'm not even gonna try. Here, he changed his language back to that of his people and motioned towards you after saying your name to indicate he was introducing her to you. You knew that any clan leader was of high ranking, and so it was wise to not anger them, so even if this woman looked as gentle as can be. Can you tell her that I'm honored to meet her? You asked of Connor, as the language would probably have to come in time with everything else in his village. Connor smiled at your words and apparently replayed the message for you. When the elder responded, as Connor looked back to you and to translate, as she says that she hopes you find peace here, your name. All you could do was nod to the wise woman, as with your gaze to the ground as you felt almost unworthy of being allowed to look in her eyes. With the introductions out of the way, Connor took you back inside and worked on lighting the fire there in the housing. He did promise he was going to burn those clothes for you, so all you could do was sit by and wait for him to encourage the fire into a mighty presence in the room before handing it over to him. His hands raised His hands raised to the thought and motioned towards the crackling embers. They are not my chains to serve, he reminded you. I merely got the fire started for you, your name. Keeping your eyes on the fire is you gripped tightly onto the fabric in your possession. Just holding such a thing made you remember it all. The men who would wine and dine you. It's the abusive nights with Terrence and your father. The last memory made you grip it tightly at the moor before throwing it finally into the fire to be done with it. Tears stinging your eyes as the hot flames caressed your face when it stroked it more with your chains. As you took great pride in just watching it burn, Connor's reassuring hand upon your shoulder would be the only thing to make you snap back from the memories of the past as you turn to look to your savior. To look to your savior with a relieved yet even if tear-stained smile. Thank you again, Connor, for everything, you whispered to him, hand upon his. I still don't know why you'd bother with a mere woman such as me. He shook his head to your words. I bother because no matter what you think you are worthy of freedom. The man moved his fingers to your cheek, then and did away with your tears cautiously. No human should suffer this life as someone's property. You are not just a thing to me. You are not just a thing to be marveled at, but a woman who is free to live as she seems fit. A small laugh escaped your bruised lips as you held his welcome touch to your face. I thank you for this chance, Connor. Upon saying his name, as you couldn't help but find it odd, he was so American, and yet not really native. It prompted you to try a bit. Or is Connor your real name? It is not, he answered honestly. My real name is... Not even gonna try to pronounce that either. But if Connor is easier to you to say, then I will not mind that you be mind. But if Connor is easier to say, then I will not mind what you call me by. Again, he let the back of his fingers caress your cheek gently. I will come either way when you call me. As you fell into his touch with all the more, it seemed you found your salvation there in his tribe. Or at least you would once you fully trained to fit in as one of them. However, with Connor there, as you couldn't say the thought troubled you as much as it once did. Oh my goodness. Sorry if I mispronounced anything. This is a really long one. I hope you enjoyed, and thank you for watching. That was a really long one.